All right, guys, I think we're now live for another Tuesday edition of Nomberg Law Live. I want to welcome everybody to our typical every weekly Tuesday at 10 o'clock Central, 8 a.m. Pacific. Interesting conversations with people in their areas of expertise. And gosh, I'm so happy to have my friend Dr. Anthony Hood, Ant, with me today. It's good to see you, bud.
Hey, good to see you too, Bernard.
Well, I appreciate you making some time. And for you folks who, let me turn this off. If you don't know Ant or Dr. Hood, you really should know this guy. He works in the UAB president's office. He works at Collat Business School. When he's not hanging out with the likes of Tim Cook and Warren Buffett, this recovering engineer can be found on a hoops court somewhere in Birmingham. So I hope I've done you some justice there, Ant, by a little introduction.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks.
Well, tell folks before we jump into our topic for today, tell folks what you do at UAB because I know you have so many roles, but I want people to know who you are a little bit more.
Yes, it's crazy. I'm going into my 10th year on the faculty at UAB. So this semester I'm teaching courses in our MBA program on management and organizations. I teach other classes some semesters on entrepreneurship. We got a course called Idea to IPO that I teach. Then sometimes I teach in our undergrad program. I teach what's called our capstone strategic management course. So I teach students, I put them in the seat of a CEO and how do you guide a company to sustainability and profitability. Before I went into academia, I was an engineer. So I was an engineer at Bell South and AT&T, and worked there for about 10 years before I decided to come into academia.
Well, I know that UAB is lucky to have you. I know that we in Birmingham are lucky to call you friend for some of us that get to see you from time to time. It's been way too long. I usually see Ant at the JCC basketball. We play together hoops for many years now, and during the pandemic, as you guys know, recreational sports like that where there's so much contact, those things have been shut down for now. But hopefully in due time we'll get back to being able to hang out
I,
on the
I
field.
hope so, Bernard, because I've picked up COVID-19 pounds. So I need to. Basketball is my main source of cardio, and I haven't adapted to any other form of cardio. I don't really like the elliptical or the treadmill. I do a good bit of walking in my neighborhood. I live over in the Bush Hills neighborhood near Birmingham Southern, so I love walking my neighborhood. But yeah, I just hope people wear their masks so we can get back to playing basketball and throwing elbows and sweating
That's
and all
right.
that stuff.
That's right. All that stuff we complain about, we don't know how much, till you miss it, how much you enjoy it. But we'll get back to that because I told some of the guys, as you saw in our group text, we're going to have some shout outs in a few minutes. But, Ant, I know you're so involved in all things Birmingham and pushing forward with our society and just making some stuff happen. And I really want to talk about what's going on in the Birmingham neighborhoods right now. I know you're involved in some of that. Talk to us about the initiatives, what's going on, how people can get involved, why it's important, those kind of things.
Right. So I think it's always just important for people to invest in their own neighborhoods. I think oftentimes people look around, they want government to do everything. They want the corporate community to do things in our neighborhoods. We want police to solve all the issues in our neighborhood, whether it's domestic violence, getting cats down out of trees, changing flat tires. And I just think there's a role for us as individual citizens to invest in our own neighborhoods. I'm a big proponent of real estate investing. I know a lot of people complain about the number of vacant and tax delinquent and abandoned properties in our neighborhoods. And while that's a problem, I see it as an opportunity for people to invest in their community. I've purchased several properties in my own neighborhood. If I lived outside of Birmingham, if I lived in like a Homewood or Trustful or Clear, there's no way that I would be able to purchase 3 houses on my same block and renovate them. It's just not possible. But in Birmingham, we just have a unique opportunity to invest in our community, make our communities better, but also make our families better as well.
No, I think that's so vitally important. You're so right. And I wonder for the people who live in those communities, do they know the history of the community? Do they know the history of the city and how important that particular area is? Like you mentioned, Bush Hills. I'm always so fascinated with Birmingham's history. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in South Alabama, but have been here since the mid 90s. And I love reading books and talking to historians and people who lived through this. Chervis Isom, J. Mason Davis. I could go on and on and on. Are just two men who I've had the pleasure of having on this show and reading Chervis's book. But I don't know how many people outside of the communities really pay attention. And I think that's a shame. I live in Forest Park, which is close to downtown.
Mhm.
I live, I guess it may be one of the closest neighborhoods just south of the downtown footprint. And I love to ride my bike all through the downtown area. And sometimes I get just a little bit north of the Civic Center. And what
Mhm.
you can appreciate when you're walking or riding your bike is so much better than riding by at 50 miles an hour or not even going into the neighborhood. What is it about Bush Hills? What is it about your community that's just so vibrant these days? What are some things that people may not know that really they ought to be informed about?
Yeah, so I live on Bush Boulevard, which is a beautiful tree-lined street in our neighborhood. Beautiful crepe myrtles in the spring and in the fall. You know, you just need to just come down Bush Boulevard. I sit on my porch a lot, and so I see a lot of the cyclists come up and down Bush Boulevard. They're probably going all the way down to Ensley, 19th Street, coming all the way back up downtown, like you said, coming up through Norwood. But it's beautiful. There's a lot of rich history there. A lot of people who live in the neighborhood, they're like second, third generation of folks that live in that neighborhood. So the people in that neighborhood, I mean, we love our culture, we love our history, and I think we're just really welcoming to other people who come into the community. And then we want to make sure that new people that come into the community make sure that they respect and appreciate the rich history and culture that's in that neighborhood.
And I think that's part of maybe it's a PR problem that Birmingham has had to deal with for many decades for the obvious reasons that people just make assumptions. And until they go down there and visit, until they meet the folks who actually live in the community, until they embrace what's going on, they'll never know. They just have assumptions, and that's dangerous, of course. But it's always very refreshing when I see such great stories of revitalization of new businesses that may be coming down there. You're right that Bush Boulevard is one of the prettiest streets in Birmingham. If you haven't been down there, take a drive on a Sunday. Oh my gosh, I love the crepe myrtles this time of the year, all through there. Are there any projects that you're aware of, Ant, that are going on in your community or nearby that the public as a whole should be involved in? I mean, be aware of or could be involved in that would help further these efforts?
Yeah, in my neighborhood, we have a very thriving neighborhood association
Mhm.
led by Ms. Walladine Streeter, and they have a committee of folks that have actually taken an older school, Wilson Elementary, that's in our neighborhood, and turned that into a community farm. And I won't call it a garden because they've taken the entire playground of this school and turned it into a
Oh,
farm. Like,
wow.
it is massive.
Wow.
And so that's great. And so neighbors come in, they help out in the garden. We give produce free to our neighbors. So it's great. And I think a lot of people don't realize Birmingham Southern is part of the Bush Hills neighborhood. So they've always been a really good partner
Mhm.
to us in the community. That's just a sprinkling of things. And then there's just just a lot of properties right now that are being rehabbed right now. That people that want to live in them, or there's some people that are rehabbing them, and they're getting them prepared for newcomers that want to come into the neighborhood. Houses don't come on the market that often in my neighborhood, and so when they do, they get snatched up just like that.
I'm sure. Aunt, my older daughter is a proud graduate of Birmingham Southern, and she had several different projects, including two during Jan term, where they actually went out into the community and participated in different events and different fundraisers and rehab things that she really remembers and cherished during that time that she was able to do that. But you're right, Birmingham Southern is such a beautiful campus, and it's right there in the middle of Legion Field to one side. Not too far away is Rickwood Field. I know that's another mile or two down the boulevard, but there really is such a rich tradition and history all through there, good and bad, that people really should appreciate about Birmingham. But
Right. And
let's take it
we can't divorce Bush Hills from like downtown Ensley
right.
because I think there's a lot of activity that's going on down there. It looks like the Ransom McCormick building looks like that's going to be redeveloped. So I think that's going to be a key catalytic project that once that's developed and downtown Ensley starts coming back to its prominence, I think that activity is going to sweep through the other parts of the western side of 65.
Well, that would be fantastic. I hope that they keep the momentum going. And let's go into the classroom.
Yeah.
What Talk to us a little bit about the modern student, the current college student, whether it's undergraduate, I'm assuming there's a difference in an undergraduate student and a graduate student for many reasons. But
Yeah.
when you bring up Birmingham, when you bring up revitalization, when you bring up the business aspects of these, what are you hearing back from your students these days? What are their concerns? What are they addressing with you?
I think COVID is top of mind for everybody, whether it's instructors, staff, as well as our students. I think people are thinking about, jobs. A lot of people come to college because they want a good job after they come out. So our undergrad students are wondering, what is the economy going to look like?
Mhm.
Clearly, we're thinking about safety. So I have an online class that I teach, but I also have a hybrid class.
Mhm.
There's about 60 students in the class. Half of the students are physically in the class, socially distanced 6 feet apart, and then the other half of the students are on Zoom at the same time. So for me, that's a different kind of skill set that I had to develop, and it's different for the students as well. But now that we're about a month into class, I think we've all gotten accustomed to this new hybrid format. At UAB, a lot of our undergraduate students are transfer students. A lot of them are first generation students, and a lot of them are from Alabama. So I think that makes us unique amongst our peers throughout the state. Now, at the graduate level, I think a lot of our graduate students are folks that work downtown Birmingham. They work at Regions, they work at Alabama Power, they work at these places, and maybe they've hit a peak in their career where they realize that in order for them to get that next promotion, they're going to have to get their graduate degrees. So I think based on those dynamics at the undergrad level and the grad level, our students are coming thirsty for knowledge. They want practical application, not just theory, which I think that's different from, maybe your traditional school where you really don't know what you want to do. You just like there and you just want to
Right.
grade.
Well,
Our students are actually dealing with things at work or in their community. And when they come to class, they want answers. They want practical tools. And that's the focus of how I teach my courses.
you just brought up a great point. I've heard more so than maybe any time in the past, I've heard more people, and this was pre-pandemic, more people advocating why should I go to college? Why not just go out and start working and get a job and hustle and learn my craft on the job, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to argue one side or the other, but my question to you is, have you seen an increase in the college classes? Have you seen a decrease? Has that been an impact? Has that conversation impacted anything that you've done or that your colleagues have seen?
Yeah. One of the things that we were really concerned about was a potential drop in enrollment for the fall for the same reasons that you mentioned. People are like, look, if there's not going to be a football season, if I'm not going to be able to pledge my fraternity or sorority, maybe I should just take a gap year and then just come back after we have a vaccine for COVID. But what we found, and this came out in the paper the other day, is that our enrollment is actually up. Which is awesome for us. So I think that just shows that people still have a hunger and a thirst for education. I think one of the things that we're doing to adapt to the needs of today's students is offering more shorter term certificate programs. So some people don't want to come and spend 2 years getting a graduate degree, a full-blown graduate degree, but they can get a certificate in like entrepreneurship or social media marketing where it's only 4 courses that they take and they get the certificate. Or maybe they take a sequence of 2 or 3 of these certificates. And now those things are more focused on the practice. Now they have a credential that they can take and then improve themselves in the marketplace. So that's what we're finding here at UAB, but this is a trend all over higher ed. It's to order these shorter term, practically focused experiences for people who may or may not want to get a full-blown 4-year degree or full-blown graduate degree.
I was going to say, it sounds like in what I've read over the last year or two, it sounds like that's a trend that many universities, colleges, and places of higher education are catering to what the needs and what the students are wanting.
Yeah.
And I applaud the efforts of UAB and other similar institutions to adapt to that. It would be very easy for the schools to say, no, this is our school, this is the way we're going to do it. And if you want to do it that way, you can just, take your money on down the road. But I don't think the world works like that right now. I don't think that it can. Well, Ant, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. And before we get into the next topic, I want to tell you guys I'm talking with Dr. Anthony Hood from UAB. Ant has been a friend of mine on the hoops court for many years over at the JCC, and he's so active in the Birmingham community. Works at the UAB president's office. He also teaches in the Collat Business School. And it's just, if you guys don't know Ant, you really ought to get to know him or take some classes from him. But Ant, let's talk about equity in the neighborhoods. I know that's another topic that is close to your heart and what you're dealing with. What does that topic mean to you, and why is it an important topic?
Yeah, I think when you look at our neighborhoods and our community, the Birmingham region, you can still see the vestiges of segregation and our long history of exclusion, oppression, and things like that. And I think the recent murder of George Floyd, and what happened to Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and so many others, has really forced us to have some deeper conversations around equity and justice. And not just in our criminal justice system, because that's important, but also in our businesses. Our businesses are still, dealing with issues of equity. Women are still being paid cents on the dollar of what men are getting paid. People of color, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, we are not getting the opportunities that we need to get into upper level leadership positions, to get on board directors and things like that. And then this whole COVID thing has really exposed the disparities in access to healthcare, but also access to entrepreneurship, access to capital to keep your business going and to grow your business. So now I think what we're seeing right now, particularly in the corporate community, is people are realizing that we have to double down on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And particularly in Birmingham, because our demographics are such that, we're over 70% African American. And so when the African American community is hurting, this entire community is hurting. And when you look at the demographics of how our country is changing, we're rapidly becoming a majority minority country. And so when you think about the workforce, the workforce of the future, if we don't start making sure that our young people are getting the education they need, the training that they need, the capital they need to start businesses and to hire and create new jobs, Birmingham is going to be in a really bad place in the next 15 to 20 years. So I think we have to think with a very long-term mindset, not just think in the short term, but think about what does Birmingham look like in 2040 and 2045, which means we're going to have to make some significant investments this year and in 2021. And what I've been saying is that if we don't make some drastic changes in this city by the end of 2021, Birmingham is not going to be viable for the next 20 years. And we're going to continue to lose ground against some of our sister cities that are being a lot more forward-looking and proactive around building an inclusive economy that welcomes all people and let all people thrive.
And Anthony, are there things or initiatives being done or being put into place now that are addressing those issues?
Yeah, so one of the things I think about is the Woofing campaign's Birmingham Promise, which, if you graduate from a Birmingham school and I think if you have a certain GPA or what have you, you get to go to college, where the City of Birmingham will pay like half of your tuition. If you come to UAB will pay your other half, so you get to come here for free. I think that's going to be life-changing for a lot of people. There's an initiative with the Brookings Institution that we've been working on for the last 18 months, along with UAB, Regions, Alabama Power, Alltech, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, to really rethink how we're doing economic development. It's important that we attract the Mercedes-Benz, the huge companies, the Googles of the world to come and create thousands of jobs at one time. But really, we're going to have to really bolster our small business economy and our startup economy, because that's where the growth is going to be going forward. And so we're going to have to double down on that, but particularly providing better access and outcomes for African Americans in this community. If more African Americans create more businesses, or the existing businesses, if they begin to hire other people, because a lot of the businesses in this community are sole proprietorships. Mm-hmm. And if every small business in this community hire just one more person, or if they hire 5 more people, our unemployment rates will be so low. You'll see more money that comes into our neighborhoods. Our tax base will grow, and this will be a thriving region. If we don't do that, we're going to be in trouble.
It's, as I said earlier, I started this during the pandemic, because on the weekends, I ride my bike from my neighborhood, Forest Park, into downtown, and I drive all the way to 65, and I come all the way back to Elton B. Stevens Parkway. So I do the whole footprint, the Museum of Art, all the way south of the baseball field, Regent Park. So I cover the whole footprint. And I'm, of course, during the pandemic and then during the protests that we had, businesses have closed. And one of the things that I'm slowly seeing, or seeing very slowly occur, is more businesses are starting to open back up. Not nearly all of them, but a good percentage of them. I love seeing, like, I think twice now in the last month or so, where they've closed down. I think it's 20th for a couple of blocks, and they have
Yeah.
outdoor seating for dinner. I forget what it's called, but it just hundreds of people are there trying to be as socially distant as they can be. But what my point is, and is I'm seeing more activity. What's the grocery store? Is it Harvest? That's always open near Paramount on Second.
Yeah.
That's where I always stop to get my water. But I'm encouraged to see more businesses opening. And here's my question:
Yeah.
is, from what you're hearing and the people you're communicating with, are the businesses that have closed, are things being done to reopen them, or other companies coming in? I mean, other business owners, do you know if those businesses or those spaces will ever open again?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of the business closures we've seen, people have said like, "Hey, we're done. We're not coming back." Others have tried to just do a temporary closure. But if you don't own your building, you were just renting. You may not be able to come back to that particular location. We're fortunate that we have a pretty moderate climate in Birmingham, but we're quickly getting to a place where it may not be feasible to be eating outside,
Yeah.
particularly when it gets cold. And then if we start going back inside, we're still in the pandemic. And what I read today is that we're now starting to see an uptick over the last 10 days in COVID cases. And I think probably today we're going to hit 200,000 people, 200,000 Americans who have died because of the virus. So, the second wave, if we can call it a second wave, a lot of people feel like we're still in the first wave. But, if and when the second wave hits, when the weather gets cooler, I think that's going to put a lot more pressure on our businesses. And they're just not going to be able to have the capacity to have that many people safely on the inside. So the businesses that are doing it well, I think they're pivoting to an online model. And I know we're talking a lot more about food businesses, but all the retail business stuff like that, being able to shift to an online business model, which they probably should have done that anyway.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people realize, like, man, we should have been doing this 3 years ago, because now we have customers all over the country and now even outside the country, whereas prior to the pandemic, you were just focusing your business on foot traffic. So I think it's going to be good for some people. I think it's going to be probably bad for more than it's going to be good. I'm going to tell you, Bernard, I think we're in store for some really hard times, I think, towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year. I think when the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures gets lifted, I'm concerned about how that's going to hit our community. And I think we've been kicking the can down the road, but at some point, we're not going to be able to kick that can down the road. So I think a lot of people are going to be hurting, and I think that's going to have a huge impact on our business and our economy.
It really is, particularly if that occurs during the cold months. And that's going to create a lot of problems. Guys, I'm talking with Dr. Anthony Hood at UAB. I want to welcome, let's see, we've got Joellen McKinney Trammell, got my buddy Carol Williams in South Florida. Oh, Carol says she's got family in Birmingham, so it's great to hear your perspective on the city and what it needs. Carol's a dear friend. She does immigration law down in South Florida. My buddy Nick Rishwain out in California has chimed in. Leo, and I apologize, I'm not going to pronounce your last name correctly, but thank you for tuning in. Mom is tuned in. So we've got a bunch of folks here with Dr. Anthony Hood and myself. Well, Amp, let's our final topic for today to go over, I think, is where do you see, and we've talked a little bit about this, but what do you see? I guess I really love what Mayor Woodfin does. I love his initiatives. I volunteer sometimes downtown at the warm stations that Don Lupo does such a wonderful job running every year.
He is a blessing to Birmingham.
He is. I actually saw him 2 days ago downtown, just gave him a little wave, and he was just doing his thing. But I love seeing the mayor when he comes through there to greet all the folks, and it could be 9:30 at night. My point here being is I like what the mayor has done and is continuing to do. Like you mentioned, one of the initiatives about if you graduate with a certain GPA from Birmingham City High School, and the incentives to bring people to their next level of education, these kids, hopefully they'll stay in the Birmingham area. And I'm not asking you to pull out a crystal ball so to speak. But you've kind of got your hand in on what's going on. And I want folks to be encouraged of what is going on in the city of Birmingham because I love my city and I want to do and get the word out, but not enough people hear and know what good things Birmingham is doing. People outside of our state who may not have ever been here or only been in, say, the Gulf Shores area or Huntsville to space, they don't know the good things that are going on in Birmingham and what's to be. And I know you're a big proponent of that. So I'm going to leave you with the final comments here about what you see, what you like that you see about Birmingham.
Yeah, man, I need another 30 minutes for this. But
Take your time.
I really appreciate the amount of participation that we're seeing in the city. And I think Mayor Woodfin galvanized a lot of that because, you know, he was so young when he came in office, 36 years old. I mean, young guy, he wears hoodies and t-shirts and Chuck Taylors and jeans. Like, you know, we hadn't seen that before from a mayor. And so, you know, he's one of my contemporaries. He's a friend of mine, you know, long before he came into office. And so I think he just brought a huge amount of just young, youthful energy to where people wanted to know what's going on in government. And now we're having a lot of hard conversations around the budget. And I'm seeing people wax poetically about the municipal budget. And I don't think people were that involved in it, you know, years ago, and particularly young people. So I think that's exciting. And, you know, I love what's going on, you know, in the city center, particularly in the historic civil rights district. You know, it was designated a national monument a few years ago. And so now there's some revitalization that's going on now. And there's an initiative being led by Rev Birmingham and Urban Impact to tie together the civil rights district and our entrepreneurial district, the innovation district where Innovation Depot is housed. So once we tie those together, where you have this, you know, current innovation, but then all this historic innovation, particularly anchored by the Prince Hall Masonic Temple, which, you know, that was the temple for African-American Masons. It was like the first incubator. That's where a lot of Black business owners at the turn of the last century got their start. And so I think once we tie those districts together and then we start replicating what's happening in those districts out in the neighborhoods, out at the Ramsey McCormick building, out in Woodlawn, north of town in North Birmingham, once Protective Life Stadium gets built and we got the Top Golf up there, and if that energy starts moving north up into the legacy North Birmingham and in Norwood, you know, I think in the next 5 years, we'll see a brand new Birmingham. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we don't leave people behind. Yeah. And so I think that choice is on us as community leaders, as business leaders in your place. You know, we got to make sure that we're looking out for everybody. And as long as we do that in a way that produces equity and inclusion, man, Birmingham is going to be able to compete with any city in the country.
Well, I tell you who's also a big fan of our mayor is Bakari Sellers. Bakari,
oh, yeah.
He came on my show a few months ago, and I know they're fellow Morehouse men, so he gave him a shout out and likes the initiatives and the things that the mayor's doing. And I can't let you get out of here. I know you and I could talk for a long time today, but I can't let you get out of here. We got to throw some shade at the Jeremys, the Pats, the Dons of our world. So they're going to see this later today. So I need you to shout, give a word of encouragement or two.
Man, you know, I'm working on my shot now that the Wire's allowing people to take some shots. So I'm just ready to compete again. You know, I just turned 45 on September 15th. So everybody's telling me I need to quit, but you know, hey,
quit. You've just begun.
That's what I keep telling people. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm ready. Don't stand ready. And watching my Lakers, I'm a big time Laker fan. So watching the Lakers get deep in the playoffs and actually be relevant again, I mean, that makes me want to keep a basketball in my hand all the time. So I'm ready to get back out there and compete. Ready to see Shane hit some threes and miss some layups, you know. Ready to see Abe get out there and ball a little bit, you know. So
what I'm hearing is a challenge to all those JCC hoopsters to get in shape and get ready when it's time to hit the court again.
Yeah, that's right. No excuses. Nobody throwing up on the sideline because they don't have any win.
That's right. Now, do you think we're going to see AD hit another three at the buzzer like that in the playoffs?
Maybe not a three, but certainly he's going to hit some game winners before it's over with. He's going to have to.
Yeah. Well, it's all good stuff down to the Final Four. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I always enjoy our chats.
All right, me too, Bernard.
Well,
Thank you.
guys, again, another outstanding conversation, interesting people and their areas of expertise. If you want to know what's going on in Birmingham and the initiatives and the good stuff, get in touch with Dr. Hood. I put the link to his professional bio in the show notes here, so you guys can reach out to him that way. As we do every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, Nomberg Law Live. Y'all have a great rest of your week. Take care.